So thank you for having me, my beautiful Unity family. I'm so grateful to be back. For those of you who know me, I've recently taken a position on the other side of this wall. I'm with the kids in the back, our young children and our older kids in the back. So technically I'm working with 6th through 12th grade right now. So what we call the Uniteen, which is middle school, and YOU, which stands for Youth of Unity. And so that's the teen program. Thank you. And I live with that in my house as well. So I have a Uniteen and a YOU right now. I got a text from Reverend Darlene that said that she wanted me to complete the talk of May, which was about intentional action today. And specifically her words were, I copied your text, how our actions are either a reinforcement of our sense of wholeness or sense of separation. How is what you are doing connecting you to the divine or separating you? Really, that comes down to, how am I being in the world? Which is a really big question. How am I being? And it's like, that puts a lot of responsibility, but it also puts so much intention and purpose and love in what you are doing every day. So we're going to dive into how our actions can be intentional and how we can live an intentional, fulfilled life. So first I want to say, I always, whenever I'm given a talk, especially when Darlene says, here's the topic, I go and pull out all my sacred books. I pull out, Science of Mind, and I pull out the Bible, and I pull out, anything by the great authors and mystics, and then I usually end up at Google, because that's just how it happens. And so I Googled intentional action, like just what's there. And with intentional action, there is an entire movement, I had no idea, of intentional living. There's an entire movement. You can go onto the web and connect in with all these communities that are living an intentional life, which made me think, am I truly living an intentional life? That's a big question to ask yourself. Is your life filled with intention? I think the greatest story, and I'm going to brag about you a little bit, Reverend Darlene. I hope I get all my facts right, but intentional life. So immediately Reverend Darlene came. So those of you who don't know Reverend Darlene, as much outside of just the sage on the stage that we see every Sunday, sage on the stage. Her life was filled with the American dream before she started her ministerial pursuit. She had this amazing job working for a toy company. Correct me if I get any of this wrong. She was working for this toy company. She was getting to travel, have these great dinners, meet all these people, go to these functions, selling a really fascinating thing, toys. I mean, who doesn't love toys? She was living this American dream, making great money, 401k, lots of health benefits and all kinds of time off and all this stuff. But yet, something deeper was calling her. Because even though she was living the American dream, the illusion that we call the American dream, the intention, what was she doing? What was her purpose? So she packed it up, left her job, and moved all the way across the country to Kansas City, which is where Unity is, and she studied her ministerial class. Now you can imagine that there were people in her life that were like, what are you doing? You're giving all this up to get in your little car and drive across the country and not have a job and study for how many years? And then you may or may not have a job when you're done. But here she sits. And we're all so grateful for that. That's called an intentional life. That's called an intentional life. Anyone here familiar with the law of attraction? Okay, so I'm gonna out myself a little bit. I watch TikTok. Don't tell my kids, although they probably know. But there is an entire movement on TikTok of law of attraction style music by the millennials and the Gen Zers, especially women. They are really into this style of music, about singing about, I don't chase, I attract, the universe has got my back. That's one of the lyrics from one of the songs I'm always listening to. There is a whole movement of law of attraction right now. So it's a buzzword. We thought it was super cool in like 20 years ago when The Secret came out. You remember that movie? And we thought, we're finally here. Now it's on TikTok and it's like everyday language. These young kids are talking about this, something that we still kind of work to try to get to. It's just in them. It's just in them. And it probably was in us at some point, very deeply. But the idea of law of attraction, for those of you who don't know, is your thoughts, your actions, your intention, what you put out, you attract. And there's a 3-step simple process to the law of attraction you may have heard. There's intention, which is what we've talked about. Attention, putting your thoughts towards your intention. And then the last step is no tension. And so we'll talk about each of those. First, remember I talked about the website that had all the cool stuff? They give tips on how to do an intentional life. Like, how can I create it? Starting today, what can I do to say, all right, I'm going to start living my intention actively in the world? The first thing they say is tune out the noise. Reverend Darlene probably did not listen to those voices, right? She still got in her car and drove across the country. What is the news telling you? What is your family or friends telling you? The good thing about unity is we're probably all communicating positive good, like you can do it, you can do it. That's why we're all here, right? But when we leave here, we may not get that message. So we got to tune that out. We have to turn away from the messages that are telling us we are separate and that there's so much strife and anger and confusion in the world right now. We have to turn away from that, because when we do, we start turning towards the wholeness of the divine. We start turning towards God, and we start seeing everyone as a reflection of that. That's the first step. The second one, just start identifying your values. What do you want your intention to be? Do you want it to be peace? That's a great one. Starting with yourself. Peace within becomes peace without. Love. What is your value? And what do you want to reflect? And then, the picture, did it come up? Okay. Oh, yeah, there we go. So those of you who were here back in January, we did a vision board. And it was a big class. There were probably 30-something people that were in that room that day, and we all put together vision boards. So this is mine. I wasn't able to finish because I was yakking the whole time. I definitely have the gift of gab, so I was just walking around talking. But I went home and finished mine, and this is mine. And so you can't really see everything, but in the upper right-hand corner it says spiritually sound. That's kind of my idea. I want to be spiritually whole. I've got some travel in here. I have my garden, which is I call it my gardening therapy. If I did not have my garden, I would probably really be crazy. But that grounds me. It's one of my hobbies that I love. And in the middle, I have words that remind me, like, I'm blessed. What does that say? Protect the vulnerable. That's something that's very important to me. I have a background in social work. So that's it. My treasure map. I see that every day. I put it in a place where I can see it, and it helps me every day to remember my intention. Thank you. Let's move into the next piece. The next piece is about attention. So we have set our intention. What do we want to do? It may be you want to attract a new partner, you may want to find a new job, you may be looking to relocate, whatever it is, health, all those things can be part of your intention. And the beauty is, as you move through the journey of life, your intention, the core of your values won't change, but the intention may change. You may have a different intention as you come into different areas and chapters of your life. But you have to pay attention to the intention. So what are you thinking right now? Are you paying attention? How are you feeling sitting in your chair? Are you comfortable? Are you itchy? What's the thought that permeates your day? Is it positive or is it negative? That is attention. Anybody here a Thich Nhat Hanh? Let me say this one more time. Thich Nhat Hanh fan? There we go. I got it out. Yes. Yes. I have my stepmother a few years ago got me a t-shirt that says wake up, because that was his big slogan. He always said, wake up. You have to wake up. Pay attention. He was the father of what they call, one of the fathers of mindfulness, which is about paying attention. And as a psychotherapist, that's part of what I do is I work a lot with mindfulness. John Kabat-Zinn, many of you may have read some of his books. The idea is that you pay attention to what you're doing. So if you're preparing a meal, you're smelling the herbs. You're giving thanks for the meat. Maybe you can see the sunlight coming through the window. Those are things you do to pay attention. What is going on in that moment? And that is exactly what Thich Nhat Hanh talked about. Wake up. Be attentive to what you are thinking, because that helps you set your attention. So if you don't know much about Thich Nhat Hanh, I'm going to tell you a little bit, because he would have fit right in with this crowd, let me tell you. Did you know he was kicked out of his home country for 40 years? For those of you who don't know much about the Vietnam War, and it was just, we're going into a history lesson. The Vietnam during the war was split into two factions, the North being the communists, the South being what at the time was, and I actually learned this doing my research on him, was Catholic. They had a very Catholic-style government. And he did not fit into either one of those because he was Buddhist. And of course, he was talking about bringing the Buddhist traditions back together, and he was trying to get unification of all the Buddhist temples and peoples, and the Catholic faith government at the time said, we're not going to have that. And so they kicked him out. And the North didn't want him back in their side because they felt that he was riling up the diaspora, because he was traveling all over the world talking about peace. How dare he? How dare he talk about peace? So he did that. He was doing these things, and he was riling people up. He was waking them up. He was brilliant. He had a Fulbright scholarship. He was very good friends with Martin Luther King Jr. In fact, it is said that he was the reason Martin Luther King Jr. spoke out about the war, spoke out against the Vietnam War. And as we all know, just a very short time later, his life was taken from him. Thich Nhat Hanh. One of the other things I'll say, and then I'm going to move on to the next bit, was during the time, the 40 years, he was told he had to leave his country. He traveled all over the world teaching peace by writing, by meditating, by being a poet, by being a teacher. He founded the largest Buddhist monastery in the world, or in Europe, I should say, in France specifically. It's called Plum Village. He did all of these things because he was paying attention to what his message was, and his message was peace. He was allowed to come back into his home country for a short visit in 2005, and then he had to leave again. And then finally in 2018, he went home for the last time, and he passed away last year. So I would just encourage you to wake up. Wake up. Listen to that voice inside of yourself that's begging you to wake up. Now let's move into the last piece of no tension. That sounds so bizarre, doesn't it? A life with no tension? When I decided to be a mom, my intention was, when my husband and I got married, we were talking about, or right before we got married, it was that whole, we were fiancés, and what are we going to do, and how is our life going to look, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I want kids. And he said, what? You want what? Because we had been traveling. We dated for a very long time. My spouse and I have been in each other's lives for about 25 years, and we got married probably about 7 or 8 years after that. I guess 9 years if you do the math. Anyway, we'd been around for a while, and we'd traveled, we had done all these things, and he just had never pictured kids. Like, why would we do that? But he came around because he wanted to marry me, and we were going to have it. Well, We couldn't have our own children, so we adopted. But the idea was I set my intention. I was going to be a mom one way or the other. That was my intention. And I paid attention. And now we get to the last piece of no tension. For those of you who have children or have worked with children or even know children, there is not no tension. So when I was looking at this, I was looking through my mom lens because there was loudness going on in the back because Michael is usually the disciplinarian. So he's like, you kids, be quiet. And I'm kind of doing my thing. And it was me in the back room trying to study thinking, how is no tension working in my life? Well, I had to do some prayer around that and some meditation to get clear. And I'm like, what are you trying to tell me right now? And I got very clear, no tension doesn't mean that you will never have tension. It means that when you are living your intention, all those things like that, they don't really matter as much. Yeah, the kids are screaming. Just, they'll figure it out. As long as nothing's on fire or nobody's dying, it's going to be okay. That's the idea of no tension, is that when you are living your divine intention on this world, that those kind of things just don't aggravate you as much. You have less tension. It's not airy-fairy pie in the sky. We're never going to have that. Life is life. It is a roller coaster. Sometimes it's really good, and sometimes we're mucking through it. That's what it's called to be human. But as we live our intention, the highs may not be so interesting anymore, and the lows, we don't really want to go there. So the roller coaster seems to be a little bit less. Still fun, but just not as intense. So no tension. I encourage you with no tension to think about what is aggravating you in your life right now, and how can you work with your intention and your attention to let all that stuff go and just be fully present, knowing you're one with God, you're one with the divine, you're one with everyone here around you. I will finish by saying, oh, actually, there was one more thing. The law of attraction. When you get to the final piece of no tension, you are according to the formula they have, when you've set your intention, paid attention, and you're in no tension, you are receiving. That's the idea of the law of attraction. When you've put all your work into it, whatever it is that you wish to seek, by the time you get to no tension, you're just there. You're in no tension. You are receiving. And in Matthew 17:20, Jesus says, if you have the faith, even as small as a mustard seed, nothing is impossible for you. Think about how small that seed is. If you have just that faith, nothing is impossible. So set your intention, pay attention, and live in the receiving bit. There'll still be some tension, sorry folks, but live in your receiving bit and it's gonna be okay, because life is so worth it to live in your intention. So be big. Richard, I'm finishing a little early today because we're going to do something right after this. But I'm going to pull Richard up and I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to pay attention. And how I mean that is as I mentioned earlier, we live in a world right now that is, as they like to say, is very divided. We live in a country that they like to say is very divided. But I don't wish to see that. Sometimes I love the saying, sometimes you just got to look reality in the face and deny it. Just deny it. That's not my reality. Another one that I love is, I heard there was a recession potentially about to happen, but I'm not going to participate. I'm going to pay attention to other things. I'm not going to pay attention to all that. Turn your back from the separateness. Turn your back from all that stuff that's telling you we are divided, and put your attention on wholeness, because we can be whole. We can be unified. We already are. We just have to remember. So remember that you are one. Remember that that person who may have a bumper sticker that doesn't really appeal to you, they are one too. And as we remember our oneness, they will remember their oneness. That is your challenge for this week. So let's bring this in to our meditation. I'm remembering for all of us here that there is one power, one strength, one God. And I am calling upon each of us to remember our oneness, to remember our intention, so that our thoughts, our words, our actions all glorify the divine. We all remember that we are one. By setting our intention and paying attention, we are in the receptive mode of receiving all of the gifts that are ours, our divine birthright. May my words glorify you. May my thoughts and actions glorify you, dear God. May my emotions be filled with love for you and for my spiritual family here on this earth. I thank you. I am grateful. We are one, and so it is.